Hi, this is Chris Monk at Highline Guitars. In this video, I wanted to talk about the tool that I prefer to use for leveling frets on a guitar neck. I use a fret leveling beam, and this one in particular I purchased from Guitar Parts Center, 3 or 4 years ago, and I've been really happy with how well this tool has performed. I'll be sure to put a link to this fret leveling beam down in the description below so you can check it out after you've watched this video. There are other tools that you can use for leveling frets, like radius sanding blocks, files with either fine teeth or industrial diamond abrasives. However, I prefer to use a fret leveling beam because it's easy to use, it's affordable, and it's versatile. The Guitar Parts Center beam I use is 16 inches long, 1 inch wide, and 2 inches tall. Both the 1 inch wide surfaces have been precision ground to be absolutely flat. If you shop for leveling beams, you've probably noticed some are made from aluminum, others are made of steel. Mine is steel, which I prefer because it's less susceptible to dents, dings, and thermal warping due to temperature changes. Steel is also heavier, which means you don't have to apply downward force when leveling. The weight of the beam is going to be enough to do the job. With aluminum, you have to apply downward force in order to remove material from the tops of the frets. Applying downward force while moving the beam can bow the neck in an inconsistent manner, which could throw off your leveling effort. To use a fret leveling beam, you have to attach a strip of sandpaper to one or both of the precision ground surfaces. For nickel silver frets, I use 320 grit sandpaper, and for stainless steel, I use 220 grit. I recommend purchasing sandpaper in a roll so you can pull off the 16-inch length of sandpaper, like this one, and then just attach it to the beam. You can use peel and stick sandpaper. However, peel and stick rolls usually only come in at least 2.5 to 3 inch wide width, and even wider. So you would have to cut a strip to length, then you would have to cut it to match the width of the sanding beam. I prefer just to buy a roll of 1 inch wide tape, and I'll pull off a 16-inch long strip and then attach it with double-sided Woodworkers tape, and I'll just put a strip on each end and then one in the center, and that's sufficient to hold the tape on there. And of course, I'll be adding links to these different products in the description below if you'd like to check them out. A word about beam length. Size does matter. You can find beams that are anywhere from 6 inches to 24 inches in length. I like the length of the 16-inch Guitar Parts Center beam because I can level all the frets at once. However, I should mention I always level my frets with the neck and fretboard level. I never add relief, nor do I simulate string tension. In my experience, I've found that when I level the frets on a dead flat neck, adding relief or string tension later on won't cause any problems anyway. Radius sanding blocks also work well for leveling frets, especially the ones made from extruded aluminum. However, the radius of the block must perfectly match the radius of the fretboard and the frets. If it doesn't match perfectly, your leveling work will be inconsistent. For example, let's say the radius of your sanding block is 12 inches, but let's say the radius of your frets and your fretboard is either slightly more or slightly less. If you use your 12-inch radius block and try to sand those frets level, you'll end up removing too much material either from the edges or the center of the fret, and that's going to affect string action and playability. To remedy that situation, you would have to pull all the frets and then use your leveling your fret radius sanding block to re-sand and re-radius the fretboard so that the two match. Then you would install new frets, and all that work would have to be done before you could even start to level. That's a lot of work. And if you plan to level frets on a compound radius fretboard with a radius sanding block, you'll need 2 radius sanding blocks. One to match the radius of the fretboard at the nut, and the other to match the radius of the fretboard at the heel. And be aware the technique for doing this type of fret leveling is tricky and it takes a lot of practice to master. Also, if you plan to work on a variety of different fretboard radius, you'll need to invest in an assortment of radius sanding blocks to match every possible scenario you may encounter. And that could get very expensive, especially if you plan to buy those extruded aluminum radius sanding blocks. With a fret leveling beam, radius isn't an issue. The same beam will work with any radius, even if it's a compound radius. Files with either fine teeth or the ones that are coated with industrial diamond abrasives also can be used for leveling frets. However, because they're only available in 6 to 8 inch lengths, they're better suited for spot leveling work rather than trying to level all of the frets at once. Here's a quick tip. If you want to spot level using a fret leveling beam, you can do so by simply attaching a shorter strip of sandpaper, and you can place that anywhere on that precision ground surface depending on what part of the neck you're working on. But what you would do is just attach that with some double-sided tape, and then over the rest of the precision ground surface you would add a couple layers of masking tape to protect the frets that you're not going to be working on. Well, that about wraps up my short guitar tool review. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and stay tuned for more reviews in the near future.